Hello and welcome to another episode of Conversations about Priesthood. Really looking forward to today's conversation. Today's conversation will be with Claire Lorden, who is the Vicar of Pershore Abbey. Just want to say a massive thank you, Claire, for taking time out to have this conversation with me.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's good to be with you.
No worries. Claire, I wonder whether you'd be happy to share a bit more about yourself and maybe share a bit about the context that you're in as well.
Okay, so I'm currently vicar in Pershore Benefice, which is in the diocese of Worcester. So I'm in the south of the diocese, which is a more rural part. Focus very much on Pershore town, which is a smallish market town of about 8,000 people or so. And attached to that, I also look after 3 small villages. And I've been here for 7 years. And in my kind of journey through ministry, I've been ordained for 23 years.
Wow. Gosh.
I know. I always say I was a child priest.
Oh, that is fantastic. So one of the first questions that I always start off with, it's a big question, and I know that people have written books about it and whatnot. The first question is, what is your understanding of the priesthood?
It's an enormous question. So I think we're all the people of God. So we talk about the laos, we're all the people of God, and God calls us to serve God in so many different ways. And some people are called to serve God in ordained ministry, whether as a deacon or as a priest. I think that the priest is a way of God enabling certain people to encourage others in their ministry and growth as they try to serve the kingdom of God. And there are sort of different ways in which a priest might do that. So there's the sort of the holding together, or the sort of sacramental nature of the church. So being part of any number of people who can lead worship in the church, but somehow coming together for those important sacraments of baptism and Eucharist feel really important and can be a focus of our church life, and how we want to enable the whole people of God to reach their potential. For me, that sacramental nature is really, really important. I love seeing other people take services and sharing in them and give thanks for that. But to be able to preside at the Eucharist is such a fundamental thing for me and my understanding of what it is to be a priest. And I've been very influenced by some of the writing of a great spiritual writer, Thomas Merton, who folks listening to this may well be very, very familiar with. But he talked about when he was obviously a priest as well as a monk, and he would preside at the Eucharist, and he would talk about when he lifted up the paten, so the flat dish in which the host, the bread, is on, and would talk about it being as if the whole of nature was on the paten. So the whole world is being held in the Eucharist. And that feels quite profound for me as a priest. So it's the whole world with all its ups and downs, all its joys, all its challenges and so on, but all the people of God. And we kind of, it just draws us all together in that priestly action, that we're all worshipping God, trying to serve God's kingdom, trying to be the very best that we can be, so that we can actually discover who we are as well. So I think that's a really important role for a priest. And that kind of ties in with that understanding of priest as kind of intercessor, kind of sharing as much as we can what God might be for people, for ourselves, for our church, for our community, for the world. I think that feels really, really important as well. And I think also at the heart of priesthood is the ability to be able to receive what people can bring to the church and give. So we're not sitting there, I'm not sitting there, one's not sitting there as a priest going, right, who might do this or that or something or other. people come to us, don't they, saying, oh, I've got an idea, or I think I might be able to help, and being able to encourage and enable that feels really, really important. Understanding of priesthood, as does the idea that I don't believe in the kind of hierarchical structures of the church. That's not really the shape that I've been nurtured with myself. I very much believe in a sort of a shared leadership model.
Amen.
Church, absolutely, yes. Absolutely. Once I get going on this, you'll never ask me this question. I'll just go on and on. So it's not sort of I'm sitting there controlling things. That's not how I am as a priest. I'm very much a team player, and that's how I understand priesthood. So that very much how together can we share ministry. So it's about sharing the tasks, sharing the role, the vision of the church. But how do we share leadership? And I think that's crucial. That the priest in any context knows how to do that and strives to do that, because I know in my context here that I'm surrounded by incredibly able people who know far more about lots of stuff that I don't know about, and I go, can you run with that? Or they say, Claire, can I run with that? And I go, absolutely, you know, and just kind of holding that and sharing it. So that feels really, really important. And I think another thing which I think is important is my understanding of priesthood has to be rooted in prayer. Is that I'm really fortunate. I'm a parish priest. I'm a full-time stipendiary parish priest. I wake up in the morning and I think, wow, I'm doing my favourite thing today. I think holding everything that I do, all that enabling, encouraging, equipping, sharing, sacramental ministry and all of that can only be rooted in prayer. So I'm enabled to go to church twice a day and to share in the saying of the daily office. We have a tradition here of silent prayer as well. It's all held before God in prayer, which I think enables not only my priesthood to be the best that it can be, but the priesthood of all the church, that entire ministry that the people of God are sharing in.
I love what you said about silent prayer. What is that? This may be a bit of a silly question. Well, not a silly question, but a bit of a naive question. What does that look like?
Oh, I've never been asked that. What does it look like? I mentioned Thomas Merton, didn't I, just a moment ago, and there's a whole tradition, it's kind of a spiritual tradition, not just of Christian women and men, but people of all faiths who've looked to contemplative prayer as their source and energy and their connection to God. So all I do is I go to church. I find silent prayer in church easier because I'm really lucky here. Pershore Abbey is very, very old, and it was a monastic foundation, and people have prayed in it for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Amazing. And when we join their prayer, and we just kind of get to a point of being able to settle ourselves. So you might do that with a little bit of reading, a bit of saying a mantra, sort of repeating a phrase in your head. So I think one that I use quite a lot is, oh Lord, make haste to help me. Just gently kind of saying that in my mind, just to still my mind and then enable my heart to be open to the presence of God. And we keep half an hour silence, and I'm joined by others. It's not just me sitting there on my own, which is lovely, because community silence is really, really powerful. Yes. And we just sit there and kind of feel God's presence. And if we're having a kind of bad day, when we're thinking, oh, I'm so distracted by the meeting that's going to happen afterwards, or things like that, the everyday, people around me, people around each other are holding each other in that silent prayer.
I love that.
Yeah. And then when that ends, we actually then go ring our bell and we say morning prayer together, which is just really, really nice.
I absolutely love that. And just going back to what you said earlier about when you think about priesthood, it's all about the enabling of the whole people of God. And there seems to be a common thread, because I've had quite a few conversations with priests who are ministering in the Anglican Church. And one of the main things that they talk about is enabling and equipping the whole people of God. And I love that. And that kind of leads in quite nicely into the question around, from your experience, what have been some of the joys and challenges of priestly ministry?
Wow, so many, because I think every day is that there is something to be joyful about. I think the privilege of being a priest is just incredible. So, you know, people, whether they're regular churchgoers or people in the community or anyone else, actually invite us such a lot to join them on their journey through life. That could be for all those happy times, like weddings. We're very much in the wedding season, which is just great.
Is it?
No, absolutely. Weddings. We're still on kind of COVID catch up, so lots of weddings and baptisms and family celebrations. And they'll say, Claire, can you come and be part of that? And it won't necessarily be me because I'm Claire, but it's kind of me because of what I represent and being a priest, I think, which is just the most enormous privilege. And I think sort of tied up with that is the joy of being able to build relationships with all sorts of people. And that's why I love parish ministry so much. And I've got my faithful congregations, but there's a whole heap of other people that I just journey with, which is so great. So that's a great joy. Presiding at the Eucharist is absolutely up there. That's, you know, probably, as I spoke about with your first question just earlier in this conversation, that is, I'm blown away by the power of that. And to preside in, whether it's one of my smaller churches, sort of Pinvin with, you know, maybe a dozen people, or at the Abbey with, you know, 100 or so, it's the same. That kind of, we are gathered worshipping God, sharing in the body and blood of Christ is just like, wow, that's absolutely amazing. I think another one of my joys is when I see people growing and developing and realizing what incredible gifts God has given to them. Yes. That is just it's a privilege and a joy to see people go, well, I'm not very sure about what I'm doing in church, or I don't think I can do that role or that task. And then they do it and they grow and they flourish. And I've seen people become more confident in their faith. And their ministry, and we've got a lovely person at the moment called Jane, who is just journeying through her training of ordination towards ordination, and she started like a good few years ago going, well, I think I'm called to something, but I'm not quite sure what. And, you know, wow, it
often starts that way.
I think it does, because, you know, God doesn't give up. So that's just a great joy. And I think, you know, in my ministry, we have so much fun. We get really, you know, community is important. We get really involved. And one of my highlights so far this year is that the Abbey, we do a walking float at the Pershore Carnival, which is our kind of one of our big town events here, and we won it 3 years ago. So we did it this year, and we all get really competitive. I'm terrible. I'm really terrible.
You don't want to compete against me.
I'm really fun. I keep saying it's the taking part that counts, and they go,
absolutely,
yeah, right. and we won, and it was just great. So and the town was really supportive, going, yay, go Abbey, you know, that's really, really great. So that's lots of joys. And then the challenges, I suppose, is the opposite side to all of those invitations, that we get invited. I get invited to journey with people through times of great difficulty and sadness. And I'm sure lots of other people that you've interviewed in parochial ministry will say, gosh, it's a privilege, but really hard to journey with the family who've lost a child, yes, or the person who's had a terrible medical diagnosis, or where there's a situation of great conflict and unrest. And you think, wow, that's hard. That can have an emotional weight on you, but you just think, wow, what a privilege to be invited to be part of that experience for someone.
Yes. Yeah.
I think another challenge probably is the sort of the current times that we live in. So trying to return to normal after COVID is a challenge. One of our particular challenges at the moment is some of our volunteers haven't all come back. Right. You know, people are still hesitant, and worried about how they might be. Some people are sort of weighed up how they use their time. So, you know, you can be a church full of every idea under the sun, but unless you can equip and resource any project with people, it's not going to happen. So that's a challenge. I think there's a challenge as well at seeing sort of injustice in our community and society, and thinking, I wish we could do more. I wish we could make this better. You know, why is it that still we have so many people coming to the food bank? I'm involved with several charities in the town. Why are we living in this century with people still relying on this help? And that's a challenge, because you want to make that right. You want to kind of have signs of God's kingdom being, you know, a fair and just place, and we haven't quite got there yet. And the kind of knock-ons to that, you kind of challenge of what might church be in the next 10 years, 20 years time.
Yes.
How will we be? I mean, you know, I am always a hopeful person, but you think, yeah, we've got some challenges ahead about how we rework and rethink how we are as a church.
That's right. Yeah, no, thank you for all of that. And some of the challenges that you spoke about, I mean, I'm not an ordained minister, but actually some of the challenges you spoke about, I see it and I notice it in the communities that I serve as well. So thank you for sharing some of that. So really, final question is I always love asking this question. Do you have any sort of words of wisdom, advice, encouragement for individuals who are sort of exploring a vocation to ordained ministry?
Absolutely. So I think one of the best pieces of advice I had when I was very, very young, was that if God calls you, God won't stop calling you. That call won't go away. God will not give up. So I heard that when I was about, I don't know, 14 or 15. I went to a church secondary school. So our head of house was a ordained priest. And he spoke about that. And I've always remembered that, because I had a sense of calling to be a priest when I was about 14, 15.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And so at that point, women couldn't be priests, but I didn't see that as an insurmountable obstacle. That is fantastic.
I would love to hear that story one day.
It will work out. So I think if people do have even that little inkling of, I think something's going on here, is to hold on to that. And the timing might not be right for you. You know, the discernment process might say, not quite yet, or something, but God will carry on calling, and you know, we will get to the point of being able to, you know, fulfill that vocation. I think also is to have confidence in the people around you, about, you know, have good people around you who can help you discern whether God is calling you to an ordained, or any ministry, but in this context to ordained ministry. I think that's really important, to be able to talk to people, because this is big. This is life-changing vocations, really. I think also a really good piece of advice I had when I was so young is to get experience. And these days with the discernment process, you have to have lots of experience before you go to selection, but make the most of every opportunity to have conversations with people who are ordained or not ordained, you know, people who are licensed ministers, why they lay licensed ministers, why they're doing that, and why they're not ordained, and how they discern their vocation. Because people who are in ministry, in my experience, love having people around them to have those conversations about vocation, and it can just help with our own discernment process.
That's right.
I think also, isn't it, to find time for God, obviously, in all of this, so to keep up a daily pattern of prayer and worship, and to be led by God, and just to kind of to go with it, and you know, it's just what an amazing blessing.
And I think that's a really good note to end on. I think just to be rooted in prayer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's something that I will definitely hold on to. Claire, thank you so much for all the wisdom that you've shared, for sharing bits of your story. And it's such a delight to see you. And looking forward to seeing you in person at the General Synod in a few weeks. Wonderful. If you're watching this, and if you've got any questions about the series that I'm developing, feel free to get in touch with me, and I'll be delighted to have a chat with you. And so until next time, bye.